So you've got a new puppy and it's starting to show a little bit of resource guarding, so it might be hanging onto its toy or growling over its food. Now's the time to nip it in the bud. This video is about resource guarding and preventing it in dogs going forward. Welcome to Canine IQ, Dog Obedience and Behaviour Modification. This is the home of factual science-based dog training. I'm Claude Bertoni. Thank you for coming back. If you're a regular visitor to the YouTube site, thank you for your support. It's really appreciated. If you're a new visitor to the site, I hope you find it interesting. And if you do, remember, hit the subscribe button, but more importantly, hit the notification bell. That way you get to stay in touch with all the new posts and videos that I put up in the future. So the video today is all about resource guarding in dogs, and more importantly in puppies, and how to prevent it. But before we go into too much detail, what we all need to understand as dog trainers and dog owners is that resource guarding isn't about one particular item. It's about a way of dealing with resources in general. And if we simply target the resources that the dog is having an issue with, we're dealing with the symptom. And you know better than I do, if you deal with the symptom, we never deal with the root cause. So everything about the video today is dealing with the root causes of resource guarding, and more importantly, how to actually prevent them from developing in your dog going forward. So let's dive in and see what we're dealing with in terms of resource guarding. So effectively, there are 5 main contributing factors that deal with resource guarding, and I want to go through each one of those in great detail today. The very first one is all about how the dog deals with you and deals with life and its resources in general. And one of the things that we need to remember as dog owners is that everything in a dog's life is all about a stimulus and how it reacts to it. Effectively cause and effect. So everything in a dog's life is a stimulus. You're a stimulus, the couch is a stimulus, the bed, the house, the backyard, toys, sticks. And all of those are a potential resource that the dog wants to share or not share. So good dog training should be about setting a behavior pattern in place where the puppy actually starts to learn that in effect it owns nothing. Now this is a little bit of a controversial comment because a lot of people want the dogs or the puppies to own everything, and they want to make sure that there's dog toys and human things and they never interrelate between the two. I think that's kind of flawed. If you have a look at all dogs that work in the service industries, whether it's police, prison, military, scent detection, all the valuable resources that they want, they have to earn and they have to get, but they don't have access to them 24/7. And all of these dogs are prime candidates for actually having resource guarding, but they learn to control their behaviors. So the first thing about resource guarding, which is this first point, is getting the dog to realize that it can have everything that it wants, but it actually owns nothing. And the reason behind this is if you own nothing and then somebody comes along and gives you something for a couple of hours, then all of a sudden the environment that you're in has now been enhanced and you've actually had a value added experience, which is a really cool thing. So if you imagine your dog, it's quite happy in its own skin doing what it normally does, and then all of a sudden you turn up and you give it a ball to play with or a bit of a tug of war thing, and then all of a sudden it goes, wow, thank you very much, that's really interesting, and you've just increased the value of my environment. Okay. Conversely, if your dog owns everything and then you take something away for 10 or 15 minutes because it's getting too obsessed with it, then the pup or the dog is thinking, hang on, I've just owned everything and now you've taken something away. And that's the root cause of resource guarding, is where the dogs actually feel at a loss. And that at a loss component is the main trigger for resource guarding issues, which we need to override. So if the dog owns nothing and then it gets given things quite regularly, and I have to stress this, we want the dog and the puppy to have access to all the different resources. It's just that we want them delivered by us at a specific point in time. And then we say to the pup or the dog, now that's it, stop playing with it, and we take it back. So it's nothing about ownership. It's everything to do with, well, it turns up and it goes away, but it's always driven by my handlers. And the dogs learn to relinquish access to different resources because they don't own any of them. Point number 2, a lot of dog trainers have a little bit of a problem dealing with this particular component. And what I found over the years is many dogs that have got resource guarding issues have also got separation or dependency based disorders. And being a good dog trainer, what I'll try and do in my dog training is to actually set a training process that is many steps ahead, and then we try and lead up to that path. So if I've got a dog that's effectively really confident in its own skin, it's independent, it makes life a lot easier to actually get the dog to learn to deal with resources. So the second point in dealing with resource guarding is to get the dog as independent as you possibly can. And what I mean by that is having dogs that are clingy and needy and they're continuously in your presence, they're in the house, they're on your furniture, sets them up in a needy situation that they cling to resources because the resources are what makes them actually feel good in that particular situation. And that's a flawed approach. So if you have a dog that's actually comfortable in the backyard, just chilling out on the grass, or just happy to be in the house and it's in its crate or it's on its mat and it's nice and relaxed, then from a very, very basic level, that puppy or that dog is quite confident in dealing with the fact that itself is a primary driver for enjoyment, and then anything else that turns up enhances the experience. And that's effectively the relationship that I try and develop with a lot of clients and a lot of clients' dogs, and my dog in particular. My dog will be in the backyard or in the crate or in the car or wherever, and the dog is happy. And then I turn up and he feels extra special, or I give him a ball and we play with the ball for a while with a bit of a tug toy. So all of a sudden the dog is now confident and he's feeling a little bit happier because I've actually value added to the environment. So point number 2 is try and get the pup or the dog to be as independent as you possibly can. You cannot have a dog that's overly independent. It's actually a very, very good thing. Point 3, impulse control. And this is a really important thing because humans have trouble understanding the whole concept of impulse control, and dogs have got no idea about it. Now, for those of you that don't know what impulse control is, effectively everything that turns up in life produces some kind of interest for us. Impulse control is all about the ability to resist temptation or a strong desire to get involved or take an action to or interact with something that you find incredibly interesting, stimulating, intimidating, whatever, something that takes your interest for the right or the wrong reason. So invariably what I find, dogs that have got potentially high resource guarding issues or problems have got very little self-control or impulse control. So one of the things that I like to get clients to do is to start to train access to all the things that the dog wants on a regular basis, to get access to them through a process called self-control. And I'll give you an example. Most people try and get their dogs to wait before you feed them. That's a really cool thing. So that food typically is one of the main resources that dogs will show a behavioral response to. So if we have a situation where the food is in a bowl and it's on the ground in front of the dog, and we get the dog to do some kind of an obedience process before it, where we might get the dog or the puppy to be in that sit, and all of a sudden if I'm the puppy, I'm sitting there and I'm obsessed with the food and I'm looking at it and I'm trying to get up. If my handler gets me to sit and be comfortable and relax and I'm focused on the food, there's a lot of fixation that's happening between the dog and the resource, and that's not a good thing, because all of a sudden that is an important thing and it's driving the attention in the dog. But if I wait and if I'm the dog and I'm looking at the food bowl and my handler's to my right, so I'm there and I'm looking, and all of a sudden I go, that looking at you is effectively a sign that says to the handler, I've now disengaged from the food. Can I have it? And if my handler's a good handler, the handler will probably say free and give the dog an instruction to eat it. And as a dog, I'm going, thank you, and now I can deal with the resource. So that whole process in that situation is all about resource, control, eye contact, release, and getting access to the food. That's an incredibly strong tool. And the same thing could happen for throwing a tennis ball. I'll go to the park with my dog, and my dog is ball obsessed, but I don't want him jumping up trying to get the ball out of my hand. So he knows that if he looks at the ball, it goes back in my pocket. So the first rule that I taught him as a very, very small pup is, if you want me to throw the ball, you've got to sit. So he sits and he doesn't look at the ball. He's actually looking at me. So I then throw the ball and my dog is there going, giving me 100% eye contact, not caring about where the ball has landed. And all of a sudden, when it has landed, I'll say to my dog, free, go get it. He goes, great, thank you. And he takes off. The benefit in doing this with food and with balls is that we're starting to get a consistent pattern happening, that the dog understands that all the resources that I want in life are available. They are there to be had. I just have to find the right way to get it. And the right way to get it is to actually show self-control. And once I've shown you self-control and I've disengaged or taken my attention away from what it is that I want, I get access to it. Fantastic way to train. Point number 4, this is a doozy. The amount of times that I go in and do a behavioural consultation in people's homes and the dogs are running complete riot. They're hectic, they're on furniture, they're running around, they're barking at the front door. That to me is a bit of a problem because it tells me that the environment that the dogs are living in is effectively an environment that is out of control. And that's a bit of a problem because what I want to do in a training environment is have the place that the dog spends most of its time with humans be the place that produces the most amount of learning. So those of you that have actually got children, I guarantee your children don't learn to be good, healthy, intelligent, interactive, vibrant, socially conscious children at school. They learn how to be good children in the context of living with you in your home environment because that's where their behavior gets shaped. It's the same thing with the dog. So what I try and get people to realize is your home environment should effectively be the classroom. So kids at school, in the classroom environment, they know that they have to tone down their behavior to a degree. And then when they go outside in the playground, they get to go crazy and get to play. So the theory that I have with resource guarding and with any kind of dog training in general is to have the house environment where the puppy learns that this is now the classroom environment because there are so many triggers that make me deal with behavior that this is where I need to be learning how to respond to them. So effectively the way the dog deals with you in the kitchen, the lounge room, the bedroom is all about how to deal with the resources in those environments. And if we start teaching self-control in these environments, then the puppy and the dog starts to understand that that's a really cool way to interact. And then we take the puppy and the dog out in the backyard and it's recess. So they're running around and they're having fun and they're playing and they're doing all these really cool things. So they start to understand that in the backyard is freedom, inside the house there's structure. Then we take this to the street. And the reason why this is an important process is that every environment that we take the dog into that has higher degrees of stimulation and resources that we can't control, we want the dog to be on the front foot learning how to control itself and actually learn how to deal with that environment. So just like your children learn to be good children here and then when they go out in the real world they apply it, the same thing works with dogs. So what we want the puppies to learn is self-control in the context of the house, and then we take them out into the street and they learn how to deal with that in the real world environment. So where the dog spends all of its time with you should be getting the dog to think and learn how to behave. Point number 5, and this has to do with general confidence and environmental strength or stability. What I mean by that is when you get a puppy at 8 weeks of age, effectively you have up until about 14 to 16 weeks to get the puppy socialized and exposed to lots of different distractions in the real world to make it reflect what you want it to be like as an adult dog. This period is called the critical socialization period. And there's another video in my Puppies playlist on the channel that talks about the importance of critical period development. But the snapshot of it is that in these first 14 to 16 weeks, as well as teaching the puppy self-control measures inside the house and learning how to control its own excitability and arousal and ownership of all the different resources, is that we also need to get the puppy environmentally comfortable and strong in lots of different situations. So if you have a look at service dogs, i.e. police, prison, military dogs, all of these dogs from about 6 to 8 weeks of age are taken into environments that they'll be experiencing as adults. And the reason why we want to do that is we want to develop a strong association with things that we need the puppy to do when it gets older. And the whole thing about critical period development is to get this puppy as strong and as confident as we possibly can in the window that makes the biggest amount of difference with the puppy. So even in the way that we normally deal with puppies on a domestic level, yes, the critical socialization period also overlaps the vaccination period with your puppies. So you need to be mindful of taking it safely to different environments, but we have to get the puppy out there. So effectively going back to one of the previous points where we're teaching how to get the puppy to learn self-control in this environment, taking them out on the street is an extension of that. And what we're doing in the context of taking the dogs out in the real environment is to look for triggers that actually might make the dog uncertain. So we need to get the puppy to realize that noises aren't an issue, sounds, temperature, environmental conditions like wind and rain and light and dark and shady and all this kind of stuff are just normal things. And what that does is it actually brings a dog's base confidence level further and further up, and it makes it much more stable. And a good, stable, confident, independent, happy dog is a dog that will show less potential for resource guarding. So if we look at dogs that work in the service agencies, these are candidates to actually have high levels of resource guarding, but they don't. The important thing with service dogs, they're independent. they're actually comfortable dealing with being alone, because on their downtime, they're actually not doing a lot of stuff. So they have to be happy in their own environment. They've got a great relationship with their handler. So they actually know that challenging their handler doesn't lead to anything, because all the resources in life come through the handler. They're available, they just have to find the right way to do it. They have a high level of self-control, which is an important contributor to how to get resources. So if we model dog ownership on how all the dogs are trained in the service industries, we're going to have very good, robust dogs. So those are the 5 main points that I think are important to firstly understand and take on board, and secondly to actually apply with your dog. If you actually follow all those 5 points in detail and stick to them quite religiously, I guarantee you will never have a resource guarding issue with your dog, and you'll actually set the dog up to actually realize that resources in life are just a natural part of it, and that they get access to all the resources quite calmly. And that's an important thing going forward, because it gives you peace of mind knowing that your dog is going to be safe and predictable and effectively never challenge you. All the military people and police, they are 100% confident that their dog will never challenge them, because they know how to deal with all these resources. It's an important way to train your dog. So if you like the content and if you have a few questions about it, by all means, drop me a comment and I'll definitely get back to you. If you've had any resource guarding issues with your dog, I'd like to hear about them as well. So drop me a comment. And in particular, if you disagree with anything that I've actually said, because there's a lot of information on YouTube and everybody's got a different opinion, I'd like to hear from you as well, because it's understanding these different points of view that everybody has that helps us learn to become better dog owners and better dog trainers. Thanks again for your time, guys. Hope you found it beneficial. So did you like the content? If so, please hit the subscribe, like and share button, and don't forget to hit the bell button for future notifications of any new videos. Thanks for watching.